Welcome back to Cooley Loves Comic Books. For this episode, I want to take a look at the new book, Department of Truth, that has come out from Image Comics. This is two issues are out now, issue 1 and issue 2. This is a story that's written by James Tynion IV. Art is by Martin Simmonds and letters by Aditya Bidikar. And what brought my attention to this book is I'm also reading Wynd by James Tynion, and really enjoying that book. It could not be more different books. I'll tell you that right off the bat. But just really liked Wynd, and so sort of wanted to kind of pay attention to what else he was doing. And then this book, Department of Truth, was coming out kind of right on the heels of Wynd. So I was like, all right, I should check this out. And so I grabbed issue number 1 as soon as it came out, read through it. I'd read some of kind of like the teasers about the story, how it was. The story was kind of founded, or the foundation of the story is about conspiracy theories. And I think it was on one of the Talking Comics episodes where they were kind of doing a preview of this, where there's some similarities, or a comparison, I should say, made to the X-Files, that sort of thing. And I think that's a fair comparison for sure. But that's where I was like, all right, I'm curious. I'll check this out. And I got it, and it is an interesting story. Like, you read through issue number 1, it is an interesting story. The artwork is definitely very abstract and interesting. It is I would say, I think it's fair to say it's a slightly challenging style of art, and we'll get to more detail on that here in a second. One of the things, like, after reading through issue number 1, and one of the things that I've kind of really come to realize after starting to make these videos, is that a lot of times it's really hard to assess a story or assess a comic just based on the first issue alone. This was one of those where I was just kind of, a little bit up in the air on it just through issue number 1. Then issue number 2 came out fairly quickly thereafter. Picked that up and read through it. And, you're kind of introduced to the world in issue number 1, and kind of the more rules of the world are filled out in issue number 2, and I feel like you have a better picture for the story that's being told, for the main character, Cole. And now I'm curious, and that's where I wanted, now that I've read issue number 2, I wanted to sit down and make a video and just kind of tell you what kind of grabbed my attention. And so if this is something that either like the artwork threw you, or just wasn't on your radar, just give you a little bit more of a perspective on it, so maybe you want to check it out. So, like, if you had to think of like the number 1 conspiracy theory of all time, probably what would come to mind for most of us is the JFK assassination, and that's part of this story. That's in some ways where they kick this thing off, but it's set in present time, and where there's a really interesting aspect to it is the main character that we meet. His name is Cole, and he works for the FBI in the capacity that he pays attention to social media and internet groups for certain organizations, and pays attention to what they're doing, and then takes that information in and uses it to train agents and that sort of thing. But he starts to see some things, or he gets pulled into something that has to do with, I guess without really spoiling anything, a flat Earth society for some reason. And then that's what kind of puts him on the radar of the Department of Truth. And so what's really interesting in what kind of, I would say, one of the central themes of this story that seems to be coming out through 2 issues is social media, and how we can present a reality, present ourselves a reality, and then that presentation of reality has effect on the reality that we live in. Hence, if you think about it in that context, this is where conspiracy theories, I mean, that's similarly related, and it really seems like that's one of the themes of this book, and that's a really interesting theme. And that's kind of what initially one of the main things that grabbed my attention. I think it's fair to say that social media is a thing that's been on our minds, or has been on people's minds a lot more in recent years. And there's some comic books where it plays a part in the story in an interesting way. I'm thinking here of Thumbs, which is another book that I've done a video on. But there's another book that I haven't touched on yet, which is called Crowded, where it's kind of social media and the internet is a really interesting piece of that story. And it looks like it could well be again here. And it's really interesting too how like complete like arcane technology is part of the story too. And like there, especially in book number 2, like you get a very visual contrast between modern technology and ancient technology, and that's an interesting one. So that's definitely one of the things that like now I've got a feel for it. I'm curious about this book. The other thing that really grabbed me about this that I think is worth mentioning is how many similarities I feel there are between this book and Electra Assassin by Frank Miller and Bill Sienkiewicz. Right from the artwork, if you look at Electra Assassin and you look at this book, Department of Truth, and the style of artwork, the surrealist or abstract style of the artwork, there's a lot of similarities there. The way what Sienkiewicz was doing with Electra Assassin and the way that he was portraying characters, like just even how he was drawing bodies of characters and such, there's a similar feel to that here. It is definitely not a clear lens to reality. This story feels like we're looking through a filter at reality, and it was done for a very clear purpose in Electra Assassin. It feels like I have a strong suspicion that it could be done for a very clear purpose in this story as well. And so that's where like the art style throws you a little bit in the beginning because it is just so like rough and abstract, and again like you're looking through a filter. Nothing is clear, and there's a couple different styles I think of the artwork, but or like subtle changes to it, but maybe based on who is telling or who you're paying attention to at the time in the story. But there's some similarity there. I feel like it's also worth mentioning, at least at this point, again through 2 issues. Again, Electra, very very typical character portrayed in red. Well, there's a woman in red. She's on the cover here of issue number 1. That also has a similar feel to the way Electra feels in Electra Assassin for most of the issues, where she's pivotal to the story, but she's on the fringes. You don't really, heck, through 2 stories we don't even know what her name is per se. But she's there, like always, kind of like this omnipresent being that's there, which is interesting. And then the final aspect that really grabbed me is in Electra Assassin, there is no omniscient narrator. There is no like overhead voice kind of explaining things, filling you in, giving you perspective or anything like that. It is only the characters that are telling their story. And so in Electra Assassin, the interesting aspect of that is the unreliable narrator. And here again in Department of Truth, we have that same scenario. There is no omniscient narrator telling us anything. We are only hearing, what we hear from the characters. And so to me, the interesting aspect of that is, are we dealing with an unreliable narrator there again? And again, with the artwork, the style, kind of feeling like we're looking at the world through a filter, I'm curious. I'm really curious if that is something of what's going on here, and if there's going to be more done or built on with that going forward. So I guess long story short is, even through 2 issues, there's a lot going on here. Cole is a very interesting character, and just kind of the narrative, like the Department of Truth in and of itself, and how it works and the rules of the world. I'm curious, and so that's where I want to see where it goes. And that's where I wanted to make a video. Just again, there's some aspects of this one that might throw you, but I'd say it might be worth investigating too. So yeah, if you can, head down, support your local comic book shop. Maybe they can help you get these issues. And yeah, we're just going to leave it there for this one. In the meantime, I'm going to head off and I'm going to read some more comic books, and you should do that too. So thanks very much for watching. Hopefully I liked the video. Hopefully you liked the book, and I'll catch you on the next one.